I'm Elisabeth Bauer, and I'm a licensed marriage family therapist, and I'm also a Jungian psychoanalyst. And my topic will deal with the reconciliation of the opposing forces that are within the psyche. So it's what happens within us. And I would like to begin with a poem by Wendell Berry that I think sets the stage. He says, "To go into the dark with the light is to know the light. To know the dark, go dark. Go without sight and find that the dark too blooms and sings and is traveled by dark feet and dark wings." Jung's analytical psychology emphasizes the reconciliation of the divisions in the human psyche. His master concept, so to speak, has to do with wholeness and transformation. And this requires us to go beneath our world that we generally see of reason and look at what is buried deep, deep inside, unbeknownst to our ordinary conscious self. It contains all the things we really don't want to know about ourselves, which may be either positive or negative. It contains our personal injuries as well as all the primal instinctual forces. And what we do about them is up to us. These forces, these oppositions, are generally opposed to each other. They create tensions, and they must be reconciled from the source residing deep within our psyche. Over and over, he stressed the significance of the law of the opposites, and that's what we've really been talking about all day today, which create tensions within us. Everything in us and everything in nature has these polarities. There is no concept that does not have its opposite. And we must struggle with them in one form or another our entire life. We never get away from it. If we ignore them, we create peril to ourselves, those around us, and to the world. And this world, Jung says, hangs by a thin thread, the psyche of man. And so, the psyche can be the greatest danger to us all. It is also the richest gift if we're willing to do the work and include everything, even our most disowned and despised aspects. Today in this symposium, we're looking, I think, primarily at the dark elements of human nature and where the trouble lies in our world today. You know, natural catastrophes do not come anywhere near the catastrophes we human beings create with our unconscious psyches. We have to create more understanding of human nature because we are the origin of all coming evil or good. In the midst of the greatest evil can be enormous good. There are always great saints and heroes or people that accomplish incredible deeds. Again, it is up to us as individuals, and this requires self-knowledge. Over and over, it's this idea of self-knowledge. In the temple of Apollo at Delphi, it says, "Know thyself," and that's really the theme. Krishnamurti said that the evil of our time is the loss of consciousness of evil. I believe sometimes there's a prohibition, even among us as professionals, to use that word, evil. Of course, we must distinguish between genuine pathology and evil and recognize each for what it is. In the end, we must take responsibility for what is hidden away in the depths of our psyche. I believe we look at evil whenever anyone is deprived of being who he or she was intended to be. Now, in my own personal life, I was pushed into that dark polarity as a very young child growing up in war-ravaged Germany during and after World War II. And the same horrors continue to be experienced by children and adults on a daily basis the world over today. We're still not vigilant enough or care enough to become conscious enough to understand its destructiveness in the deepest sense. My childhood was lived from a place of perpetual fear, beginning with the sound of boots of the marching German soldiers down our city street. It was an awesome, fearsome sound. And with time, there were the ever-increasing nightly air raids and sitting in shelters, shivering with fear. One night, a bomb did strike our house and took my father away forever. My father had not been drafted because he was much older than my mother and served in World War I and was always very proud of the fact that he never carried a weapon. He was a medic. When we emerged from the shelter because of a damaged gas pipe, the city was on fire. This left me with certain felt experiences and images that will never completely go away. It was the end of secure family life. It was the end of many things. It created chaos, unremitting chaos. In fact, chaos became the norm. Nothing was secure or could provide comfort. Even Mother Earth could not provide comfort or security because she too was being ravaged relentlessly. And we must remember that war is not over when the war is over and the so-called fighting stops. We're seeing this right now. It continues on and on endlessly. Externally, through endless physical deprivations, everything from lack of food to no shoes for growing feet. And emotionally, the trauma manifests in fear of loss and other ways. It leaves behind a great trail of trauma and a need for much reconciliation on many, many levels. A need for reconciliation on a personal as well as archetypal level. Immigration to the United States brought its own contradictions. It meant coming to a place of safety, and we were welcomed with friendly generosity, even though we came from the enemy country. That was totally astonishing. What a relief to be safe, and yet I was homesick and felt the strangeness of language and culture. It was painful to hear other children talk about the missions their fathers flew over Germany, and my immediate internal question was, did your father kill my father? Then the relief, remembering that my mother had told us it was an English bomb that had struck our house. At the same time, I knew from the adults that it was a very good thing that Germany was bombed and lost the war. What did I know as a child? But I had heard enough of the atrocities that I truly believed that this was so. Still, why did it take my father away? At that age, I never thought about the American fathers that didn't come home either. I'm sure you recognize the enormous contradiction and paradox right there. This is what we humans create with our unconsciousness. And then I wanted to be American so badly, I practiced chewing gum and kept saying okay all the time because I thought that's what Americans did. Still, everything was foreign, and some part of me felt lonely and out of place. I remember my citizenship ceremony and how proud I was finally to be an American. This needed a cultural reconciliation. Now I am concerned that this great generosity of spirit in the American culture might reverse itself. It took years of psychological work for me to realize a number of hidden things, such as being embarrassed that I was a German, that I had no right to mourn my own childhood with its losses. After all, I was a German and not a Jew who suffered so much more. It took a long time to let myself mourn without guilt. For me, then, the paradoxical concepts of war and peace, good and evil, retribution versus reconciliation, fear versus strength and courage, and numerous other opposing ideas have been a strong presence in my psyche and something I've been dealing with most of my life and will remain on an ongoing basis. I found Jung's concepts to be deeply grounding and rich with meaning. The idea that everything in life is about growth was helpful and healing. And all this reminds me of part of a poem by Rumi, which you have in your packet. Put what salve you have on yourself. That's part of getting well. When you lance yourself that way, you become more merciful and wiser. Jung said that everything in life consists of a complex of inexorable opposites, and that we are never sure that one will prevail over the other. So much of what we do is trying to get rid of what is uncomfortable for us, and so we project it away. We think, but are we free? No, we are more imprisoned than ever, as most of us know from experience. It is vital and yet so difficult to know when we are projecting. I wish that our government knew something about that concept. Walt Kelly's Pogo said, "We have met the enemy and he is us." In all this, we've been talking about what Jung calls the shadow. Now I'll give you just, for those of you who may not be so familiar with it, just a few theoretical ideas. Jung addressed both the personal shadow, which is all the negative stuff that's in my personality and that I want to disclaim, I want to have nothing to do with. And that can be either light or dark. So our good qualities can be there too, and we don't know them, and we don't claim them. He also addressed the archetypal shadow, which might best be described as an identification with a specific negative aspect. Then I become that. This is best described by Jung in his book, Answer to Job. The personal shadow, not dealt with, can turn into what is called the collective shadow and the form of racism, I think in the form of what we're even seeing in this country, and how we are tending to look at Muslims or whatever. It just becomes like we jump on a collective bandwagon. My own life experiences described include both personal and collective shadow, as we've seen. So, when we remain unconscious of our shadow, it chooses for us, and we live it out, oblivious about its presence. When we identify with it, we are in real deep trouble because we're in the realm of evil. If we admit to ourselves that we are uncomfortable and begin to question things like, what is this about me? We can begin to grow in our capacity to be who we really are. And if we do open to the awareness of our shadow, we can understand something about the agony of St. Paul when he said, "The good I would, I do not, and the evil I would not, that I do." This is what is called shadow work, that recognition, and it leads eventually to transformation, albeit very incrementally and slowly. I believe in this country, one of our collective shadows is that we do not mourn what has to be mourned. Instead, we bring closure. Hear that word all the time. Closure means to close off. But mourning opens us up and brings reconciliation of these opposite forces within us and can create wholeness. You know, wholeness is a relative term. We're never completely whole. We're always in process. If we did not close off so much, perhaps we wouldn't allow what is happening in the world today. Closing off is becoming numb to our human feelings and experiences. At this time in this country, I think we're afraid not only of the terrorists, but we are afraid of our own feelings of mourning. In a recent article that someone just sent to me, E.L. Doctorow said that the president cannot mourn, but is a figure of such moral vacancy as to make us mourn for ourselves. Finally, Lawrence Vanderpost said, the kind of society, the kind of politics that will save us will have to be aware. We must demand psychological illumination, psychological awareness. Otherwise, we get people sparring with their own shadows. The human being who starts by withdrawing his own shadow from his neighbor is doing work of immense, I want to say this again, immense, immediate political and social importance. Some more quotes from Jung. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And lastly, he said, where love rules, there is no will to power. Where power predominates, there love is lacking. And I want to end with another poem by Walt Whitman. One thought ever at the fore, that in the divine ship, the world, breasting time and space, all peoples of the globe together sail, are bound to the same destination.